The studio lights were bright, almost blinding. Meghan Markle sat calmly on the soft gray couch of the View, dressed in a simple but elegant navy blue dress. Her posture was straight, her smile polite, and her eyes focused. The audience clapped as Joy Behar leaned forward with a smirk, pretending to be friendly. "We're so happy to have you here, Meghan," Joy said. "Royal life must be hard having all that money and attention." "Poor thing," the audience chuckled lightly. "It was meant as a joke." Meghan's smile didn't move. She nodded once, tight lip dot. The other co-hosts shifted in their seats, sensing something. Meghan tilted her head slightly, her eyes fixed on Joy. Then, very softly, she spoke. "You think this is about crowns?" she said, her voice calm but cold. Joy raised an eyebrow. "Well, you were a duchess, right?" Meghan blinked. "This isn't about titles. It's about truth. It's about classified files." Buried under American soil. The studio went silent. Even the live audience stopped moving. Cameras zoomed in as the room held its breath. Meghan looked directly into the camera lens, her voice steady. "Look into Project Halcyon," she said. "Ask Judge Boasberg why he sealed the names." The director in the control room panicked. "Cut the feed. Cut it now," he yelled through the headset. The screen faded into an emergency commercial break. Back on set, chaos had already started. Producers rushed toward Meghan, whispering urgently. The audience was confused, unsure if what they saw was real. Joy looked stunned, not by fear, but by the sudden loss of control. "What was that?" one of the producers asked Meghan. Not hiding his anger. Meghan stood up slowly, taking off the mic attached to her dress. "The truth," she said. "You invited me here to talk about a charity, but you wanted to laugh at me. You don't get to laugh anymore." Security stepped in, not to remove Meghan, but to hold back the rushing staff. Cameras were still rolling. Backstage, though not live. Meghan walked straight past them and out the studio doors. Within 10 minutes, Twitter exploded. Hashtags like hashtag Project Halcyon, hashtag Meghan Leaks, and hashtag Judge Boasberg were trending worldwide. No one knew what Project Halcyon was. No one had ever heard of it before. But everyone wanted to know. Now clips of Meghan's.com powerful words played again and again across the internet. Independent news platforms started asking questions. Reddit threads were filled with theories. Some thought it was a made-up stunt. Others said Meghan had finally snapped. But then something strange happened. An anonymous Reddit user posted a single line, "Halcyon is real. I saw the sealed documents when I interned in D.C. 2017. Ask the chief judge." The comment was deleted within minutes, but screenshots had already spread. Meanwhile, Joy Behar appeared on a live stream later that day, trying to laugh it off. "Meghan's always been dramatic. I think she wanted to go viral." "Well, she got what she wanted," she said, trying to stay casual, but people weren't buying it. Comment sections filled with backlash. Even fans of The View were disturbed. Why was Joy making jokes while Meghan dropped what sounded like a government secret on live TV? That evening, CNN and Al Jazeera both ran short segments titled, "What is Project Halcyon, and why did Meghan mention a sitting judge?" Political analysts were confused. Legal experts were silent. One former intelligence officer appeared on a podcast saying only if what she said is true. Someone's going to jail, maybe more than one person. At Meghan's home, Pam Bondi stood waiting with a folder in hand. She had seen the live broadcast. "I told you they'd react like this," Pam said as Meghan entered. "They're scrambling now." "They should be," Meghan replied, setting down her bag. "They made me stay quiet for 10 years. I lost everything because of their secrets." Pam opened the folder. Inside were legal documents, sealed statements, and one photo. It showed Judge Boasberg at a private event, standing beside 2S. Officials and one unnamed British man. We go to court in 48 hours, Pam said. But tomorrow, you're doing an interview with someone who still believes in real journalism. Who? Nia Washington, Pam replied. She's been tracking Halcyon since 2020. Quietly, but she's ready. Meghan nodded. Let's finish what they started. Outside, the media was setting up camp near her property. Cameras flashed from a distance. Helicopters hovered above. But inside the house, Meghan's face remained calm. She wasn't just a guest anymore. She was the one holding the match, and the system she once feared was now standing in gasoline. Asterisk, the next morning, the world was still buzzing. News anchors across the globe opened their segments with one question. Who is Judge Boasberg, and what is Project Halcyon? Inside a quiet studio in downtown D.C., Meghan Markle sat across from Nia Washington, one of the few journalists who didn't work for a big network. Nia was sharp.com and known for exposing corruption with facts, not emotion. The interview wasn't live, but it would go public within the hour. The room was dim, simple. No makeup artists, no studio laughter. Just two women and the truth between them. Thank you for coming, Nia began, adjusting her glasses. I know this isn't easy. Meghan gave a small nod. I've waited a long time for this. Nia leaned in. Let's start with the question everyone's asking. What is Project Halcyon? Meghan took a breath. Started as a private cooperation between American intelligence and British security agencies. It was meant to track threats related to foreign royalty living in the West, but it turned into something much darker. Nia frowned. What do you mean? They began using it to monitor conversations, emails, movements, not of criminals, of people like me, people they considered optics problems, and Judge Boasberg. He sealed every record that tied American legal systems to Halcyon, Meghan said. He protected the names of those who authorized surveillance on my family. Nia was silent for a moment. She had heard rumors, but hearing it directly shook her. Do you have proof? Yes, Meghan said. Pam Bondi is filing it in federal court today. Signed documents, transcripts, and audio. Across town, Pam Bondi was walking into the District Court of Columbia, trailed by two assistants pushing carts with sealed files. Cameras followed her every move. She turned once and said to the press, "You'll want to be in that courtroom. History is about to be unsealed." Back at the interview, Nia asked, "Why now? Why speak up after all this time?" Meghan looked down for a moment, then raised her eyes. Because I was told if I ever said the words Halcyon or Boasberg in public, I'd lose everything: my home, my safety, my son. Nia sat back, stunned. Who told you that? Meghan shook her head. Let's just say it wasn't a stranger. It was someone with a badge and a silence agreement. Within the hour, the interview went live. View counts shot up by the millions. Clips were instantly posted on TikTok, YouTube, and Telegram. People didn't just listen, they reacted. A former NSA technician anonymously confirmed parts of Meghan's story on an encrypted blog. Another leak followed a memo from 2018, marked confidential, referencing Halcyon UK coordination and subject Joy Behar tried to do damage control again. She went live on The View, saying, "Look, it's her word against the entire system." But this time, the audience didn't clap. One of the co-hosts even looked uncomfortable. Behind the scenes, ABC executives started asking questions. Who greenlit the original interview? Why was Meghan pushed into a corner live on air? In D.C., Judge Boasberg sat in his chambers, his hand shaking slightly as he reached for a report. A clerk entered and whispered, "Sir, the Bondi filing just hit the press." He didn't respond. In a hotel room nearby, Nia and Meghan watched the courtroom feed as Bondi stood before the judge and calmly said, "Your Honor, we request to unseal all prior rulings connected to surveillance under Project Halcyon, including those with your name on them." Gasps filled the room. Meghan turned to Naya. It begins. And outside, protesters started gathering. Signs read, "Unseal the truth. Justice for the silenced." We believe Meghan the system had tried to erase her. Now, she was writing her own headline. Courtroom for B was full. Reporters sat shoulder to shoulder, their fingers ready on keyboards, eyes fixed on the woman in red Pam Bondi. She stood with confidence, holding a folder that seemed heavier than paper. Meghan wasn't present in the room. She watched from a secure location with Nia Washington and 2 legal aides, but her name echoed off the courtroom walls. "Your Honor," Pam began, looking directly at Judge Boasberg, "this court has an obligation to protect justice, not hide it. We are filing a motion to unseal sealed records related to government surveillance under a joint operation known as Project Halcyon." The judge remained still, but his fingers gripped the edge of his bench. Pam continued, "We have obtained a copy of a 2018 internal memo that references surveillance of civilian targets, including Meghan Markle. This memo, Your Honor, bears your signature." Gasps broke out from the gallery. Boasberg leaned forward. "That document is classified, Ms. Bondi." Pam stepped closer. "Then why is it in the possession of my client?" She held up a printed copy marked confidential across the top. "Order," the judge snapped, banging his gavel. "This is a federal matter. I advise you not to test the limits of this courtroom." Pam didn't blink. "We're not testing, Your Honor. We're revealing. You knew these operations were illegal. You approved surveillance on a U.S. citizen without cause and without oversight. That citizen is now sitting across the world watching you try to hide." Cameras weren't allowed inside the courtroom, but one courtroom sketch artist captured the tension perfectly. Judge Boasberg, lips tight, staring down Pam Bondi like a cornered man. Outside the courthouse, protesters filled the streets. Interviews had gone viral. A leaked memo had triggered a congressional oversight committee to launch a preliminary investigation. Meghan's name was trending worldwide again. In a dark van parked 3 blocks from the courthouse, a man in a black coat sat watching the live news feed on a tablet. His fingers tapped rapidly on a burner phone. A message went out. She opened the box. "Stage 2 if files drop." "Back in the courtroom," Boasberg finally spoke. "Ms. Bondi, if you truly have evidence that involves national security breaches and illegal actions, you will submit them sealed for judicial review. This is not the time or place for theatrics." Pam nodded slowly. "Then let me add one more exhibit for review." She turned toward her assistant, who wheeled in a secure case and opened it to reveal 3 black binders. She pulled one out and handed it to the court officer. "This is a transcript of a call from 2019 between a retired MI5 official and a U.S. agent, discussing ways to suppress Meghan Markle's public image," Pam said. "They call it containment protocol." Silence. Judge Boasberg leaned back in his chair. "The court will take a recess. 30 minutes. As he stood and walked out, cameras caught the moment his left hand slightly trembled. Meanwhile, Meghan sat silently watching the screen. She turned to Naya. "It's more than they expected." "They thought I'd just talk," Naya replied. "You gave them receipts." Phone alerts buzzed. Another anonymous leak had hit the internet. A redacted document titled Halcyon Tier 3 Clearance Memo was now public. It included a list of targets, Meghan's name circled in red. Below hers, a name no one expected: Nia Washington. Meghan looked at Nia, who stared at the screen, stunned. "Why am I on this?" Meghan whispered, "Because they knew you'd help me." Back inside the court, security was doubled. Judge Boasberg returned, looking pale but composed. "We will review the submitted exhibits. Until then, all proceedings are adjourned." As people stood to leave, Pam Bondi leaned over to a reporter and said one quiet sentence. "He knew. He always knew." Outside, as the crowd grew louder, as the news tickers rolled across every screen in the nation, one question filled the air. If the judge was part of it, who else was? And in a room full of files, somewhere deep beneath Capitol Hill, another name was highlighted. Meghan had only scratched the surface. The real war was just beginning. Inside a secured government facility deep beneath Capitol Hill, two intelligence officers stood silently before a wall of digital files. A red flashing header blinked on the screen. Project Halcyon security breach. Stage 1 exposed. One of them whispered, "She's not backing down." The other replied, "Then we move to discredit." Across the city, Meghan Markle sat across from Pam Bondi and Nia Washington, reviewing the newly leaked Tier 3 clearance memo. Nia's name was there clear as day. "This isn't just political anymore," Nia said softly. "They're labeling journalists as threats." Pam nodded. "And they've done it for years. They just never expected someone like Meghan to light the match." Outside, protesters gathered by the thousands across major cities. Digital billboards displayed the same message. Unseal the truth. Back inside the courthouse, legal motions moved fast. Pam Bondi had filed for an emergency hearing. This time, it wasn't just about Meghan. It was about every name on that memo. The hearing began behind closed doors. Only authorized personnel and attorneys were allowed in. But leaks found their way out almost immediately. Judge Boasberg, under visible stress, tried to control the room. "These are classified intelligence operations. This court will not allow reckless exposure." Pam responded calmly, respectfully. "Your Honor, what you call exposure, we call accountability." She laid out Exhibit 11. Audio of a conversation between two officials discussing quieting the Duchess before the British side pulls the plug. Voices were distorted, but one was clearly American. The phrase "collateral containment," repeated 3 times. A low gasp filled the room. The judge pressed his hand to his temple. "You can't possibly validate the source of this audio," he said. Pam stepped forward. "We already did, Kay. And the former British agent who recorded it is ready to testify, under oath." Outside the courtroom, a convoy of black SUVs arrived. At a private airfield, inside one of them was the former agent, his face shielded, voice disguised. British intelligence had cut ties with him. He was now under U.S. protection. At the same time, Joy Behar sat nervously in her dressing room at The View. Ratings had tanked. Sponsorships were on edge. The producers wanted her to apologize. She stared at her reflection and said out loud, "What if I was wrong?" Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Project Halcyon wasn't your joke to make. The truth is your burden too." She turned pale. Elsewhere, Nia Washington prepared for a live broadcast on her independent news channel. This time, it was global. She faced the camera and began, "Tonight, I show you the audio. I show you the faces. And I show you why Meghan Markle was silenced by a system that feared what she might say." She played a short portion of the leaked call. The audio was grainy, but clear enough. "We'll manage the press through controlled outlets. The View's secured. She'll be mocked, humiliated. No one will believe her." The internet erupted. Hashtags like #Justice for Meghan, #Boasberg knew, and #shutdown Halcyon flooded platforms. A digital war had begun, citizens versus the machine. Back in court, Judge Boasberg made a stunning move. He recused himself from the case. To maintain integrity, he claimed, but most believed he was protecting himself. The case was handed to a new judge, Lena Ortiz, known for her toughness and zero political alliances. Her first order: unseal all exhibits submitted by Ms. Bondi. Suddenly, all records entered into the case became public. The documents included surveillance reports, recorded calls, and internal memos dating back 10 years. 1. Shocking. File a psychological profile prepared on Meghan Markle before her royal wedding. Labeled Asset Risk Tier 2. The media exploded again. They've profiled her before she ever became part of the royal family. Pam Bondi confirmed it. feared her independence, her background, her voice. That night, Joy Behar went live alone without producers, without a script. I mocked someone I didn't understand, she said. I believed what they told me to believe, and now ... I know better. The apology spread across screens worldwide. Some accepted it. Others said it was too late. Meghan, sitting quietly in a private home with her son asleep upstairs, whispered to herself, "They thought I'd break. But they forgot I already did. I'm just walking through the fire." And far away, in a secure room with flickering lights, a man in a black suit watched the screens and muttered, "She wasn't supposed to make it this far. Now we clean up or we burn with her." The truth was out, but the war was just warming up. The morning sun rose over Washington, D.C., but it brought no peace. News outlets had turned their entire coverage toward the unfolding chaos. Overnight, the unsealed documents had gone viral. For the first time in years, people weren't just talking about Meghan Markle, they were listening. In her apartment, Nia Washington was preparing for another interview. This time, it wouldn't just be her and Meghan. Someone from inside the machine had agreed to speak. Across the table sat the former MI5 agent, his identity hidden. His voice had been distorted, his face shadowed, but his words were deadly clear. They didn't just monitor her, he said. They built an entire campaign to discredit her. British intelligence, U.S. agencies, and key people in the media. The operation was called Halcyon Phase 3, focused on silencing royal disruptors. She was at the top of the list. Nia leaned forward. "Who gave the order?" The man hesitated. Then he said, "Look into Senator Howard Clark. He's the bridge. British by blood, American by politics. And he was deeply tied to the Royal Family Security Council before he ever took office here." Within minutes, Nia's team cut and posted the segment. It caught fire. Headlines exploded. British spy names U.S. Senator in Meghan surveillance plot. Halcyon Phase 3 dark alliance between monarchies and media. Clark named as key operator in Project Halcyon on Capitol Hill. Senator Clark was cornered by reporters. He kept his smile, but sweat dotted his forehead. "This is absurd," he said. "Unverified gossip from disgruntled former agents. There is no conspiracy." But his voice cracked. And that was enough. That same evening, Meghan Markle was invited. Back for one final sit-down on The View. The producers had begged for it. Joy Behar hadn't spoken since her apology. The air inside the studio was tense. There was no audience this time. Just cameras, silence, and history. Meghan walked in quietly, her expression calm but focused. Joy stood to greet her. "Thank you for coming back," she said softly. Meghan nodded. "Let's not waste time." They sat. Joy looked into the camera. "Last time you were here, you dropped a word that changed the world. Halcyon. Since then, people have resigned. Documents have been unsealed. You've named judges, senators, spies. And you've risked everything. Why now? Why not stay quiet?" Meghan didn't blink. "Because silence cost me too much. And because the people who created Halcyon didn't just come after me. They're still coming after others. Whistleblowers, journalists, activists, people like you. Joy, you were just used differently." Joy nodded slowly. "And you, I was the warning," Meghan said. "They made me the lesson for others. Stay quiet or suffer. But now I'm the reminder. Speak anyway." The studio was silent. Joy looked down at a card in her hand. Then she tossed it aside. "I have something to say," she whispered. The camera zoomed in. "I was told to mock you," Joy admitted. "That day you came on the show, the producers gave me a list of safe jokes. They said it would keep the network clean. They said it would make good TV. I didn't question it. I should have." Meghan didn't react. Her silence was louder. "Then anger?" "I'm sorry," Joy said, genuinely. "Not just for what I said, but for laughing when the system told me to." Meghan finally spoke. "The apology isn't for me. It's for the little girls watching who think truth gets punished. It doesn't. Not forever. The broadcast ended there. No music. Oh, no commercials. Just truth. Moments later, phones buzzed across the nation. Breaking. Senator Howard Clark steps down amid halcyon allegations Bondi files criminal. Request for federal investigation into covert surveillance operations. Judge Lena Ortiz signs order to freeze all halcyon-linked accounts pending review across the world. People were talking about something bigger than royalty. They were talking about surveillance, control, power, and who got to have a voice. In her car. Driving away from the studio, Meghan looked out the window at the flashing lights of reporters and protesters. She said to Pam Bondi, who sat beside her, "They thought the camera would bury me." Pam smiled. "Instead, it became your witness." Far away in a shadowed government office, a man in a pressed suit shut off the screen. He looked around the dim room filled with files and monitors. She flipped the script. He muttered, and behind him, one red file remained unopened. Labeled in thick black ink, *, the Senate chamber was in chaos. Hours after Senator Howard Clark resigned, a bipartisan emergency committee was formed to investigate Project Halcyon. Media vans surrounded the Capitol. Protesters held signs that read, "We are all targets, end Halcyon." Now truth is not treason inside a private hearing room. Pam Bondi stood before members of Congress, her voice unwavering. On a large screen behind her, documents, memos, and surveillance photos flashed one after the other. "This wasn't just about Meghan Markle," she said. "This was a framework. It's a global map of control. Is anyone considered a narrative threat? Journalists, royals, political critics, was quietly monitored or neutralized. Meghan was simply the spark they couldn't contain." One senator whispered, "And Clark authorized it." "Partly," Pam answered. "But he didn't build it alone." In London, a member of parliament called for an urgent review of all intelligence-sharing treaties with the United States. British tabloids, once cruel to Meghan, now changed their tune. Was Meghan right all along? Headlined across newsstands. Meanwhile, Judge Lena Ortiz reviewed over 2,000 pages of halcyon documents. Many were heavily redacted, but some weren't. She paused when she reached a report titled, Phase 4, Contingency Protocol. Royal Extraction. It listed locations, code names, and one shocking entry. Archie, subject beta. In her quiet home, Meghan sat with her son on her lap, unaware of the new revelation. But Bondi had seen it. And she was already drafting a motion to classify Meghan and her family under federal protection. At the same time, Nia Washington received a new anonymous message. It came with a location pin and 4 words: "They're cleaning the vault." She grabbed her camera team and rushed toward the address, a hidden document storage facility just outside Langley, Virginia. When they arrived, smoke was already rising from the back. Someone had lit the evidence. Security tried to block her, but Nia shoved past. She managed to film stacks of burning files. Many marked HLC3 and Media Protocol. A guard yelled, "Turn that camera off." Nia didn't flinch. "Tell them I already streamed it." She had gone live. The footage exploded online. CNN and Al Jazeera picked it up. Social media was flooded with one phrase: "They're burning the truth." That night, Meghan received a call from a blocked number. She answered, expecting silence. But the voice that spoke was command familiar. "You've exposed too much," the man said. "Phase 4 has been activated." "Who is this?" Meghan asked. But the call ended. Immediately, Pam called a private meeting with Judge Ortiz. "They just threatened her," she said. "This isn't political anymore. It's operational, and it's active." Ortiz didn't hesitate. "Then we go public with Phase 4. All of it." By morning, the Washington Post had published an exclusive story titled Phase 4 Protocol, the Final Step to Silence. Meghan Markle. The report detailed plans to relocate Meghan and her family under the guise of foreign threat prevention. People were stunned. This wasn't a scandal, it was a government-level takedown. Across the Atlantic, former British officials began confessing anonymously. One retired intelligence analyst told the BBC she was never the problem, she was the proof. Meanwhile, Pam Bondi held a live press conference. Standing behind a wall of microphones, she declared, "This isn't just about Meghan. This is about every person who has ever been told to sit down and shut up. About every reporter who was followed, about every citizen who was watched for, asking the wrong questions. And we're not stopping until every person behind Halcyon faces justice." Cheers erupted. Across the world, people began gathering in city squares, lighting candles, holding silent vigils. Not for someone who had died, but for someone who had survived. Back inside her home, Meghan watched the candlelight vigils from her window. Her phone buzzed. It was Nia. "They burned most of the files," Nia said. "But not all. We found something." "What is it?" Meghan asked. There was a pause. "K list of journalists and public figures," Nia replied. "K people marked as next." Meghan's hand tightened on the phone. "Your name's at the top," Nia said. "But so is mine." And somewhere deep within an undisclosed location, a cold voice spoke into a phone. "They've turned her into a symbol. That's far more dangerous than a whistleblower." Then silence. The storm wasn't over. It was just changing shape. Rain fell quietly over Washington, D.C., but the city itself was louder than ever. Pam Bondi entered the Department of Justice flanked by 2 federal marshals. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were sharp. Inside her briefcase were documents that had survived the fire at Langley. Copies had been made, encrypted, and stored in 3 locations. Today, she wasn't making a request. She was making a demand. "I want an emergency federal indictment," she told the special counsel. "Not just for Clark. I want everyone involved in Phase 4. Boasberg, the handlers, the intel officers, and I want charges for conspiracy against civil rights." The room froze. "They targeted a U.S. citizen and her child," she added. "They called it containment. We call it what it is, state-sponsored suppression." Meanwhile, Meghan sat with Nia Washington in a safe house far from the city. Both women stared at the screen as breaking news flashed across every major network. Washington, D.C. paralyzed as Project Halcyon criminal case advances, indictment looms. DOJ reviewing Pam Bondi's emergency filing. New leak suggests royal family pressured. U.S. officials behind closed doors. Meghan said nothing at first. She just watched the screen. Nia finally spoke. "They won't let you walk away now." Meghan turned slowly. "Then I won't walk. I'll speak." Again, that evening, she recorded a final message. No studio, no lights, just her in front of a single camera. "I was never a threat," she began. "I was just a woman with a voice. I believed I could use it to speak about kindness, about change. But the louder I spoke, the more powerful people tried to shut me down. Not with words, but with wires, with files, with silence." She looked directly into the lens. "You watched them mock me. You watched them twist my story. Now you're watching what was really happening behind the curtain." She paused. "I'm not the only one they followed. I won't be the last unless this ends now." The video went live. Within minutes, it reached 20 million views. Within an hour, 100 million. By nightfall, the White House was forced to respond. A press secretary confirmed, "Yes, the documents submitted by Ms. Bondi are being reviewed." The administration condemns any unlawful surveillance of American citizens. But Pam knew that wasn't enough. She filed a second motion, this one, for immediate witness protection. Because hours earlier, a message had been intercepted by a cyber forensics team. Initiate Phase 4 lockdown. Markle not to leave U.S. soil. NW assets to be disrupted. NW Nia Washington. 2 black SUVs had already been seen circling. Her last known location, the safe house, was moved. Security doubled. But tension grew. Meghan's husband, Prince Harry, spoke from overseas for the first time. Standing at a human rights conference in Geneva, he addressed the world with calm fury. "No one should be followed because they told the truth," he said. "No one should be threatened because they loved someone inconvenient." The audience stood and clapped, many wiping tears. That same night, Joy Behar made one last appearance on The View. No makeup, no script. "I was part of it," she said. "I didn't know how deep it went. But I still played along. And now I'm done pretending. This isn't about gossip. It's about power. And what happens when someone dares to challenge it?" Joy resigned the next morning. In Washington, Judge Lena Ortiz granted full access to a protected database tied to Halcyon. What they found stunned even the most seasoned investigators. There was a Phase 5, not yet activated, but fully prepared, codenamed Erasure. Its mission: delete all digital and legal presence of any target deemed narrative hazardous. Names on the list included Naya, Meghan, several other journalists, even foreign dissidents. The DOJ moved fast. A raid was launched on an unmarked government server farm in Nevada, one designed to house Halcyon's digital core. There, they uncovered live scripts written to erase identity records, travel logs, even online publications. One federal agent who entered the building whispered to a colleague they were going to delete her life. But it didn't happen. The scripts were stopped, the server was shut down, and the world watched, breath held. Meghan was still standing. Dawn broke over the Capitol. Pam Bondi received the message she had been waiting for. Grand jury accepts motion, indictments approved, case moves forward. And in that moment, everything shifted. Meghan Markle, once mocked on live television, now stood at the center of the most explosive government scandal in decades. She didn't need a title. She had something more powerful: the truth. And this time, the whole world was listening.